Welcome to Real Stories MKE, brought to you as part of X-Fabula's mission to connect Milwaukee through real stories. I'm Joel Dresang.
And I'm Kim Shine. X-Fabula believes that everyone has personal stories worth sharing. And so they run workshops to help folks build their storytelling skills and their confidence. And they also host story slams where folks can get on stage and, of course, tell true stories. In this episode of Real Stories MKE, we are sharing 4 of those memorable stories.
Our theme this time is remembrance. Sometimes when we lose someone special to us, we latch on to a keepsake or a custom or a quest, something that helps us honor that person's memory. I was at a funeral just a couple of weeks ago and saw my nephew Mike there, and he had a nice suit on, and I commented about it, and he opened up the jacket and smiled at me, and there was a purple button inside that said, Margie's favorite. So when my mom passed away, I told the story of how my mom had 7 kids and 18 grandkids and all these relatives, and she would always say that she didn't have a favorite. But at the funeral, I told everybody that, in fact, everybody was my mom's favorite. Right. So I made those little buttons and passed them out. Oh. And so that was in 2016, and my nephew is still wearing that pin.
Yeah.
And I found that was a pretty cool remembrance.
I love that because you never know when someone's going to pass on, obviously, but there is always something I feel that reminds you of them. So it's nice when you actually have a tangible thing. Yeah. You know, a memory is always great, but if you can look at a pin or look at a scarf or something like that, it just brings you closer.
And in this case, it was a shared experience because all he had to do was show that to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's really awesome.
Our first remembrance story comes from Maia Lindvall. Maia spoke at an X-Fabula Teen Story Slam in May 2025. For Maia, the remembrance of her father and other loved ones turned into a quest. Here's Maia.
Dr. Theodore Woodward once said, "If you hear hooves, look for the horses, because you'll never expect to find a zebra." This is a picture of my dad. Unfortunately, when I was 9 years old, he passed away due to a rare disease called bile duct cancer. That was really hard for me. I was a child at the time, losing a parent, but it was even harder because I didn't understand the disease that he passed from or what I could do personally about it. I remember the feeling of guilt of not spending enough time with my father while he was alive, but more than anything, I wanted to do something to change what had happened to him. I remember asking my mom if there was a walk or something we could do in honor of him, but there was nothing we could find for his specific disease. Later, when I turned 13, my baton coach, who had been a mentor to me since the age of 5 years old, had passed away due to complications of a disease called myasthenia gravis, which is also a rare disease. When I turned 15, someone very close to me personally became a survivor of another rare disease called anal cancer. I realized that rare diseases had become very prevalent in my life, and I wanted to do something to change that because I realized that it was taking over my life personally. When I became a freshman in high school, I decided to join the Miss America opportunity. In doing so, every girl is given the opportunity to pick a community service initiative, which is something that she's passionate about and wants to make a change in her community. I knew immediately that I wanted to do something to honor my dad. So I began researching facts about rare disease, anything I could. And I started an Instagram page. I called it Project Zebra. That's the name of my community service initiative. And I post facts on there about rare diseases so people can become more informed. But I didn't just want to end here. I wanted to raise funds for rare diseases. I made bracelets, one I'm wearing right now, and that I've brought today, to donate funds to the National Organization of Rare Diseases. I wrote a children's book that I'm currently in the works of publishing so that children can become more informed about what they can do at that age to help people with rare diseases. And currently at my high school, I'm starting a toy drive so that I can donate those toys to people in the rare disease wing at Children's Hospital, because going through treatments at that age is very scary, especially when you don't understand that disease. I want to go back to that quote I mentioned earlier. If you hear hooves, look for the horses, because you will never expect to find a zebra. Those are representative of the rare diseases in the world that are left undiagnosed or misdiagnosed for many years. I brought my crown today because it's giving me an opportunity to speak about my dad and reach a larger audience so I can inform people about rare diseases and what they can do to solve the problems of it. Rare diseases are not as rare as you might think they are. I'm here not today because it's just my story, but so many others. And I want to be a voice for myself, but as well as the many other people who have been affected by rare disease in their lifetime. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story as well as so many others.
That was Maia Lindvall.
You know, I was going to say earlier in the episode, but I wanted to just hold it.
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends who lost their moms this year, I think over the summer or into the fall. And there's been a lot of remembrance happening this year.
Sure.
It's been heavy, but it's also been kind of freeing. I think one of my friends, said that the passing of their mom, though heavy, it was also like, I'm happy that she's okay. I'm happy that she's all right, and then we can just be.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's just been a time.
Right. And it's interesting that we have these keepsakes and these memories and these customs that we hold on to, and yet, as you said, it's freeing.
Mm-hmm. Well, usually Exfabulous Story Slams invite people to share their true stories without notes and without props. But the Teen Slam in May 2025 had the theme Show and Tell, which sort of begs the use of props. Now, the prop shared by our next storyteller was his keepsake of a brief friendship that made a lasting impression. Here's Thomas Fountain.
All right, this story is about my one of these friends I had met, but let me just get to this point. I remember it was back in 2020, probably you could say June. I got off and I went to go see a friend, and his cousin was there, and we became good friends over the summer. And I could say one time he had came over, he had done something he wasn't really supposed to, and his auntie had told him to go back home. I haven't heard from him in a minute, but what I did hear is that a kid was hit off his bike on Fonda like due to two cars racing, and I found out that was him. And I was really woke up on my sleep and told this. So when I got up, I had got some more news that he was like on life support and he died. They got him back up, and then I said a couple hours later, he died. And that's why I keep this picture of him on the fender. So anytime I think of him, I could just look at the necklace. And that's it.
That was Thomas Fountain, and Thomas shared this story at the Teen Show and Tell Story Slam in 2025.
And you could hear in his voice how emotional, how difficult that was, and yet how brave Thomas was to share that.
Yeah, I think anytime you share something so close to your heart, it helps you just release a little bit, and I think it shows you the bravery that comes with acceptance.
Right.
So kudos to Thomas. Now, Exfabula does provide compensation for teens who take on leadership roles at the Teen Story Slams, as well as the teaching artists who lead the workshops. So thank you to the funders of the Youth Affinity Storytelling Project, including the Milwaukee Recreation Partnership for the Arts and Humanities, the Greater Milwaukee Foundation's Marvin W. Hasla Fund for the Arts, and Exfabula members.
Kim, occasionally we encounter extraordinary signs that remind us of someone we've lost. And that's the case of our next remembrance story, which comes from Ken Murack. He shared this story at a 2023 Exfabula Story Slam with the theme Awkward. Here's Ken.
Hello. I titled my story 1099. The story takes place at the Doysters bowling lanes, which are on 63rd and Fond du Lac, and it's a 12-lane house. And I was showing up there that night, a Friday night, from my Friday night bowling league, 5 people. And I knew that we were bowling on lanes 11 and 12, and that's all they had in the house. Again, a small bowling establishment. So I went to those lanes to begin changing into my bowling shoes so I could bowl. And I recognized on the floor there were carpet remnants. And at the Doysters bowling lanes, it was not uncommon for people to spill drinks. And they would use those carpet remnants to keep you from stepping in a wet drink with your bowling shoes, which is not a good thing if you're a bowler. So I didn't pay much attention to it, at which point I sat down, and one of my bowling team members called over to me and said, "Hey, Kenny, be careful over there. Booby went 1099 there this afternoon." And I said, "He went 1099? That's crazy." And he goes, "Yeah, so be careful." Well, our team consisted of 4 Milwaukee firefighters and 1 garbage disposal truck driver, Dean Miller. So on the Milwaukee Fire Department, back in those days, 10 codes were used to shorten your transmissions on the radio, and 10-4 meant message received. 10-7 meant that you were not available. 10-8, so you kind of get that. 1099 meant that you were on scene with a deceased person. Obviously not a good thing, but that was the deal. So we always said 1099 if we knew somebody had passed. So Booby, and Milwaukee Fire Department isn't that great with their nicknames. His name was Wayne Bublitz. He actually had a heart attack and died there that afternoon because he bowled in the previous nights. He bowled in the afternoon league. And I said, well, rest in peace, Booby. So we start bowling. We're doing our shadow balls. I apologize, but that's what I said. Rest in peace. And so we start our shadow balls. Well, one of my teammates said to me, he says, "Hey, Booby had the first 7. I said, "You're kidding me." Well, the first 7 strikes in a row means you're 7 of 12 to get to a perfect game. You need 12 strikes to get a perfect game, a 300. I said, "Well, did Booby ever have a 300? And he said, "No." I said, "Whoa, that was a little too much for him because he checked out. I mean, he went down, had a heart attack." So, okay. So we start bowling. We start our first game. The kid I'm lined up against isn't that good of a bowler. He starts with the first 5 in a row. I'm like, what's going on? Kid gets the 6th one in a row. I says, "Hey, you know what? Booby's in this kid. He's going to get his 300 through this kid, and he'll be able to go to heaven happy." So the kid gets up to throw his 7th ball, cuts a big split. I'm like, "Booby, what happened? Where did you go, man? What did you take off for?" And all my teammates start shushing me. They say, "Hey, shut up. Booby's family is here getting his stuff. They're in the courtroom right now picking up his belongings after he went 1099. So I go, and oh, there they are. I said, "Well, that explains it. He left this kid because he wants to go and see his family for the last time before you go wherever you go after your 1099. So, okay. So we finished the first game. We finished the second game, and we begin the third game. The third game, Dean Miller, who's our anchor bowler, the only non-firefighter on the team, he starts off with the first 6 in a row. I said, "Booby's back." Booby is in Dean, and he's going to get his 300 through Dean. Yeah. So Dean gets up on the lanes for a 7th shot, and bam, laces this thing. 10 in the pit. 8th ball. Boom. 10 in the pit. 9. Another perfect strike. So now he's on the approach, and for the 10th frame, and those of you non-bowlers, the 10th frame you need to throw 3 strikes to get the 300 game, which is a perfect game. So he's on the approach, and this is a 12-lane house. It's not uncommon for everybody to stop and watch. Plus, they were listening to this idiot talking about this guy who's in a live person trying to get his 300 game. So everybody's not a peep into place. He throws the first one, 10th ball, bang, strike, 10 in the pit. 11th, same way, bang, 10 in the pit. Now he's on the approach for the 12th ball. The place is dead quiet. Everybody's watching Dean. And he throws the 12th ball. Boom, bang, 10 in the pit, 300. perfect game. The place just erupts. Everybody's high-fiving. Everybody's slapping Dean on the back. I'm going, Booby, way to go. You got your 300, man. Way to go. Beautiful. Good job. At this point, my teammates go, Kenny. I said, what? Look at our score. So I look up at the score sheet, the overhead score marker, and there at the bottom of the tally was the total of our 5 members of our bowling team, 1099.
That was Ken Murack. Ken referred to the 10 codes used by police and firefighters and truckers and others to abbreviate communications, like 10-4 means yes. It turns out that the codes can vary by jurisdiction. In this case, 1099 is associated with a deceased person. It's also an IRS tax form, but I don't think that relates to this story. Kim, do you want to do some ultra shorts?
I would love to do some ultra shorts.
So ultra shorts are just how they sound. They're
Yeah.
little stories that people write on a slip of paper, and at the story slams, the host will read them on stage. It gets more voices into the story slams, and it varies the pace.
All right, I have one.
Okay.
This is from Beth. Beth says, many people see their loved ones who have died in a rainbow or a blue jay, but I'm luckier. My dad, cigar smoking, junkyard owning, scotch drinking dad, shows he's still with us by providing really good parking spots when we request them.
Nice. My family sees my dad in cardinals. So I'm not sure where that came from. But,
Okay.
when you see a cardinal. So here's an ultra short from Anonymous. My mom unexpectedly died in 2018. I was with her as she passed. She was wearing this necklace that day. After she passed, I asked the nurses if I could have it. I haven't taken it off since. I turned 21 a few weeks after my mom died, and I vowed then that I would carry her legacy with me. And I do. I think of her every time I touch the necklace and try to represent the best of her.
Nice. This here is from TK, who says, my father passed away 4 years ago. After that day, my mom kept telling me stories of how he was sending her messages. I was Daddy's little girl, so I thought I would receive some sort of sign, but nothing. And finally, after 3 years, I was on the train, and a man across from me was an exact look-alike of my dad. I started crying on public transportation. My dad finally came to me. He'll always be in my heart. Well, Joel, sometimes we think we know someone, and then someone else's remembrance of them alters how we see them. And that's what happened to Lucrezia Phifer. Now, Lucrezia grew up knowing her grandmother, but didn't really know about her until after she died. Here's Lucrezia.
All right, I just put my name in the hat. And this is my first time being at one of these. As he said, my name is Lulu Phifer, and I am 22 years old, but I was 3 years old when my maternal grandfather passed away. And it wasn't very long after that my grandmother then started developing dementia. And that was how I knew her my whole life. I knew how much my mom loved her, and I grew up with many stories of what a wonderful mother she was. But all I knew her as was a very sweet, but she wasn't with it. And it got worse and worse the longer that she lived. And she became a burden to my family to the point where, by the time she passed away in 2016, early 2017, when I was 16 years old, I mostly felt a sense of relief. I was happy that she had found peace and that my family would now be able to move on with their grief, which had been suspended for so long as she gave way into dementia and ultimately into Alzheimer's. And that February was at the height of the busiest time of my junior year of high school. And the last thing that I wanted to do that weekend was hike it up to rural Minnesota for a funeral, which I had never been to before. But that is what I and my family did for my grandmother's funeral. And that is where I discovered my grandmother's legacy. I was pretty uncomfortable that whole weekend, surrounded by a lot of family that I didn't know, who I didn't feel comfortable around, who I didn't agree with on a lot of things. But I remember feeling a sense of like displacement as well, as if I was like putting on a show of mourning this person that I didn't really know. I knew I'd spent a lot of time with her, but I didn't really know who she was. She was never able to tell me stories. I knew that she was a good mom, and I knew that my mom loved her, but I didn't feel sad because I didn't know who she was. But I was asked to say a reading at my grandmother's funeral by the rest of the family. And so in order to prepare for this, I decided to read the obituary that my mom and her sisters had written for her, because I just didn't feel like I could, in good conscience, go up there and represent my family when I felt like I didn't really know this woman. And when I read her obituary, it totally changed my life and the way that I perceived my lineage, because I discovered this story of this amazing, powerful woman who was born in the Midwest in rural Minnesota, who used her education as a secretary to move away and move to California and get herself a job and make herself money. She shocked all her family by moving away. But she was also, she was truly humble and truly like a servant to others. She joined a service called the Lay Mission Helpers in Tanganyika, which is now Tanzania, and that's where she met my grandfather. And she lived a life that was so beautiful and so true to herself. My mom fondly remembers her driving this gorgeous, like, lime green Corvette. And yet she also would, spend so much time on service missions. And that totally inspired me. And I suddenly felt so connected to this person who I had never, ever really known while she was alive. And while that was really sad, because I felt like I had missed out on knowing this gorgeous person who indirectly gave me life, in death, it was like I was open to this life that she had lived and that she had given for others. And when I went up that day to do the Love is Patient, Love is Kind reading, I'm sure any Catholics in the room know, I burst into tears because I realized that I loved this person who a day before I was like, I don't really know her. And her legacy lives through me every day. It's, from her inspiration that I am now a member of the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And that's why I'm here in Milwaukee. And it's through her inspiration that I was inspired to get out of my small Midwestern town. I'm from South Bend, Indiana. And yeah. And so that is the legacy of Charlotte Di Pasquale. And you are looking at her right now. And I'm so proud to say that though I never really knew that woman because of the horrible disease of Alzheimer's in her life, her legacy lives on. And I'm so glad I got to share it with you all today. Thank you.
That was Lucrezia Phifer, and she shared this story at an Exfabulous Story Slam in 2022 with the theme Legacy and Heirlooms. And we do have an update. Now, she says that She shared the story when she was in Milwaukee for a year of service with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. Now, we sent her a replay of the story, and she said, "It was so nice to listen to that and reflect on the person I was. I now live in London, where I just graduated with my MFA in acting, and I still try to live Charlotte's legacy every day." Should we do some more ultra shorts?
Sure. Do you have one?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
one from Anonymous. In May of 2016, my uncle passed away. He passed away from ALS, but made the most of his time from when he was diagnosed. He took a trip with family to Jamaica because it was his favorite vacation spot. And after his passing, our family took his ashes back to Jamaica and spread them in the ocean at sunset. Afterward, everybody jumped in and took one last swim with him.
Nice.
It's very sweet.
Yeah. Here's another ultra short from Anonymous. Sadly and tragically, Bob died this past Christmas. His struggles with demons and drugs caused us to be estranged. Bob loved nature, especially birds of prey. 5 days after he died, a great horned owl was in our driveway. I believe he will be happier as an owl.
Nice. This one's from JJ. My grandmother passed away, and my partner left our 1-year-old in the living room for a moment a few days afterward. And our child started laughing really loudly as if someone was tickling him. My family believes it was my grandma, who loved him and me dearly.
Nice. Here's an ultra short from No Name. I like that better than Anonymous, actually.
I do too.
Yeah. Art was the name of a vagrant on State Street. Oh, I know this story. In Madison, in the late 1970s, he would wash windows for State Street merchants and use the proceeds to buy drinks for himself and bellow out at passing college students. An enterprising student put Art's likeness on a T-shirt under the timeless title, "What is Art?" The shirt was very popular, though I doubt Art ever got a penny from it. When Art died, students gave him a New Orleans-style funeral procession on State Street. The merchants came out to salute him. And I do remember, I was a student in Madison during those days, and I think I actually covered that funeral. It was very touching. Yeah, it was very nice.
Wow.
Well, Kim, that's all the time we have for this episode of Real Stories MKE. But you listeners out there, don't fret, because there are plenty of stories on xfabula.org/radio. Go there because Xfabula has been collecting these stories since 2009.
And there are a lot more.
There
a
are,
lot more.
yes.
The Xfabula website lists upcoming storytelling workshops and story slams. And if we are lucky, we will see you at an event very soon. And maybe you'll even share one of your stories or write an ultra short for the hosts. You can connect with Xfabula on Facebook and Instagram and follow Real Stories MKE wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks to everyone who makes this program possible, including Xfabula staff, the storytellers, of course, producer Jasmine Gonzalez, and audio engineer Sam Woods.
For Real Stories MKE, I'm Kim Shine.
And I'm Joel Dresang. Remember, everybody has stories worth sharing. Think of telling yours.